Hello friends! We encounter numbers everywhere and every day. You read numbers when measuring your height, when you count your steps on your Fitbit, when you read your score on a video game, and when you read the prices at a store. Some numbers are easy to read, like a simple omelette recipe. Other numbers are long and more difficult to read. That's the number of stars in the universe. 200 billion trillion stars. But what if the number you're reading isn't a whole? What if the number on the scale is just between 44 and 45 kilograms? What if the temperature today is somewhere between 20 and 21 degrees Celsius? What if your cookie recipe requires a bit more than a cup of flour? In this episode, we'll explore the numbers between numbers. 44 and a quarter, 20 and a half, 1 cup of flour and 3/4. How can we write those numbers without using fractions? One way to express parts of a number is by using a point called the decimal. Stay tuned to know more. How long is this pencil? According to the ruler, it is between 7 and 8 centimeters. We are going to write 7 before the decimal point. Now notice that the distance between 7 and 8 on the ruler is divided into 10 smaller marks. Each deci is 1 out of those 10 dashes. The pencil reaches 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th small dash, 5 out of 10 dashes. That's what we write after the decimal point. That pencil is 7.5 centimeters long. Notice how the 5th dash is longer than the other dashes on the ruler because it marks halfway through 8 centimeters. 5 is half the 10. In other words, 7.5 means 7.5. How long is this paper clip? The length reaches slightly before 2 centimeters. Count the small dashes, and they are 8. This paper clip is 1.8 centimeters long. If it were 0.2 centimeters longer, the paper clip would have been exactly 2 centimeters long. This highlighter is exactly 13 centimeters long. So how do we write this using a decimal point? It's 13.0. In fact, we can add a decimal point and the 0 to any whole number. 55 equals to 55.0. And 157 is the same as saying 157.0. An old man painted the gates of his castle. All the gates looked similar. These grids represent the number of gates he painted in a day. He painted 4 gates completely and only a part of the 5th. Can you think of a decimal number to represent the number of painted gates? To help you, I'll divide the last gate into 10 equal sections. The old man painted 3 out of the 10 parts of it. That's 4.3 gates, or 4 3/10, since it is 3 out of 10. What if the painter painted this much out of the gate? He painted 3.5 out of the 10 sections of the last gate. Expressing this using a decimal number is tricky, since it's between 4.3 and 4.4. I have an idea. Let's further divide this grid into 100 smaller sections. How many are shaded? 35, 10, 20, 30, 35 out of the 100, which means that our decimal is 4.35. Let's have another example. How many gates are painted here? Write this number using decimals. What comes before the decimal point is the number of gates he fully painted, which is 2. And after the decimal point comes the part. How many parts out of 100 did he paint on the 3rd grid? He painted 85 out of 100. That's 2.85 gates, or 2 and 85 hundredths, which is 2 and 85 over 100. One day, this old man painted 0.5 gates, and on another day, he painted 0.50. Which day did he paint more? Which of these numbers is the greater number? We notice that there is a 0 before the decimal point, which means he did not fully paint any gates. Instead, he painted part of a gate on each day. 0.5 represents 5/10, which means 5 over 10, and 0.50 represents 50 hundredths, which means 50 over 100. What do you notice? In both cases, the old man painted half the fence, regardless whether it's 5 out of 10 or 50 out of 100. He colored an equal space on both days. So if we add a 0 to our decimal, the number would still have the same value. 0.2 is equal to 0.20, and 0.7 is equal to 0.70. The same amount is colored on both squares. It is easy to transform a fraction with 10 or 100 as a denominator into a decimal number. But what if our fraction was different? What decimal represents a quarter? This grid represents the amount of birthday cake eaten. The kids ate a quarter of the cake. How do we write 1 out of 4 using a decimal? We can think of a fraction as a division sentence. 1 out of 4 means 1 divided by 4. Can we divide 1 by 4, a small number, by a bigger number? How many 4s are there in 1? Let's see if it works. 4 times what equals 1? It's 0. So we will add 0 to our answer, and then we can add a decimal point to the answer and add as many zeros to our number. Let's begin with 1 0. We're now dividing 10 by 4. How many 4s are there in a 10? 2, because 4 times 2 is 8. Let's subtract 10 minus 8 equals to 2. Let's add one more 0 to our number and bring it down. How many 4s are there in 20? 4 times 5 equals to 20. 20 minus 20, no leftovers. So 1 divided by 4 equals 0.25. This is the decimal that represents a quarter. 25 out of 100 also makes a quarter. What if the kids ate 3 out of 4 parts of the cake, which is 3/4? How can we write this as a decimal? Remember, a fraction can also be considered a division sentence. 3 out of 4 means 3 divided by 4. 4 times what equals to 3 or less than 3? 4 times 0. We add a 0 and a decimal point to the answer and a 0 to the number we are dividing with. 4 times 7 equals 28. 30 minus 28 equals to 2. Add one more 0 and let's bring it down. 4 times 5 equals to 20. Subtract. No leftovers. 0.75 is the same as saying 3/4. If we divide the square into 100 tiny sections and color 75 out of the 100, we would be coloring 3/4 of it. Now you know what decimals are and how we use them and write them. I'll see you next time, my friends. Bye.
لمشاهدة المزيد من الحلقات زوروا سات 7 بلس.